Decoding, I can't give you what you need. Leslie Wells, connection coach here. I help individuals heal, thrive, improve, repair, and connect more deeply in their romantic relationships by looking at things through an attachment lens. This phrase is most often heard by the dismissive avoidant. If you're new here, you may want to go back and look at some of my other videos on the dismissive avoidant so you can get a different perspective of their childhood and a lot more information about them. But essentially, they grew up with emotional neglect. And so when you hear a dismissive avoidant say, and usually this will come up in conflict, when you hear them say that I can't give you what you need, it's usually when you're bringing them feedback or some sort of issue that needs to be resolved in the relationship. The very first thing is that they often don't know what it is that you need naturally. So because they did have emotional neglect in childhood, they don't have the same intuition to be able to sort of read the room or read a person to know how to naturally show up for a person. So if you hear that from your dismissive avoidant, one of the things that you can do to help them so you actually get to your goal of getting your needs met is to be very specific about what your needs are and what it looks like to meet those needs. So you don't just say, hey, my need is to spend a lot of quality time with you. That doesn't work for them. They need you to paint a picture. That looks like we do that once or twice a week for 30 minutes or 2 hours, and that looks like we put our electronics down or we go out and we do something together. That looks like we actually have deep, meaningful conversation versus just talk about superficial stuff like the weather and what's going on at work. You have to be very, very specific. So when they say, I can't give you what you need, your responsibility to get to your goal is to be very specific and really make sure you paint a picture of what it is that you actually need. The second piece of this is that a lot of times when it comes to the emotional stuff, because the things that trigger a dismissive avoidant, the places that they feel the most uncomfortable and become very dysregulated until they go into a trauma response, is conflict, feedback, expectations, closeness, intimacy, really deep conversations. There's a lot of things that trigger them. And so when they say, I can't give you what you need, you may want to listen to them. They are somewhat aware of their lack of capacity and the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and defeat that they often get, especially in conflict, are because they inherently deep down do know that they don't have the capacity to give you what you need. That doesn't mean they can't gain that capacity or that they're broken or there's something wrong with them. It just means that they don't have it at that time. If they were not modeled these things and these neural connections were not created in childhood, then they don't naturally have them the same way that you probably do. So when they say, I can't give you what you need, if it comes to some of these emotional things that are required for emotional connection and intimacy, it may very well be that they can't. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to give up on them or that you quit or it's just helpless. It just means that you're going to need to learn to set some boundaries around getting your needs met and that you may need to really encourage them to get help so that they can grow in their capacity to be able to show up for you better. So if they could speak to you to decode what they're saying, here's some of the things that they are saying. One of the things that they are saying is, I hear perceived criticism whenever you bring me conflict or a problem or something that you need me to show up in. And when I hear that perceived criticism, that hits on my defectiveness wound. That then makes it very difficult for me to sit in this space and meet you there. So that's one thing that they say. Another thing that they are trying to say is that your emotions overwhelm me and I do not know what to do with them. So I can't meet you here. So they have a hard time identifying and sitting and processing their own emotions. So when you bring them yours, they don't know what to do with that. Usually at first they will get defensive and then maybe push back a little bit, but then a lot of times what they do is they go into a flight response. It's so uncomfortable for them to sit in that space because feelings come up, feelings of rejection. I'm not good enough. I got this wrong. I can't please my partner. I'm never going to get it right. I can't give them what they need. Those things lead to feelings of failure or I messed up or I'm not going to get it right. Those things do not feel good. And when things do not feel good for them, they try to skirt around those feelings that don't feel so good. That's a flight response. And then if things get really bad and they continue to escalate, then they go into a freeze response where they really are unable to give you what you need in that moment. It does not matter how bad they want to reassure you, validate you, lean in, give you physical touch, whatever it is you need in that moment. They are frozen and completely unable to do so. Their fears of actually dealing with the discomfort in their body are larger at that moment than their desire to lean in and to give you the things that you are trying to get from them. Now, here's the thing. They can give you some of these things up front. So in the beginning of a relationship, they're not lying to you. They're not a fraud. They actually are able to give you these things because it's not until later in the relationship when things like commitment, expectation, being able to sit in conflict, the things that make a relationship real, it's when those things come up that they go into their trauma responses and that they start to feel triggered and they're unable to show up well. So they're not doing this to be deceitful in the beginning. They really can show up for you better in the beginning. Those things come with the longevity of the relationship. One of the other things that they're saying is, I don't know why you're even coming to me with your needs, because I've learned that I meet my needs myself. I take that over here, I deal with that alone, and I am responsible for my own needs. So why aren't you responsible for yours? I don't know what to do with this when you're asking me to meet your needs. So if the need that you're bringing them, if the problem, the feedback, the whatever it is, the area of your relationship that needs work, if it requires vulnerability, difficult conversations, emotional intimacy, validation, being able to sit in the space of your feelings, being able to speak into your feelings, if it requires them speaking to their feelings, the truth is, unless or until they start doing their work, they probably cannot actually meet those needs for you. And that's something that you need to understand on the front end if you are with a dismissive avoidant.